Welcome. My name is Drew Blazik at Adrian College. I am professor of finance and economics. And I wanted to give a quick introduction of how a cost schedule module will look for this finance course. So first, let's start with what it'll look like in Blackboard. So when you select the cost schedule, first what you will see is a cost schedule process. And in this process, I'm going to demonstrate it through the interactive Excel sheet, and if the student wants to pull this up, they can see, or as a reminder of how to solve it. So it's going to show you the whole process step by step, what to enter and what to expect. Okay, so that's the beginning part. And then just to show you got that. And then this is where the cost schedule lecture will be. Underneath it is a Excel sheet that the student gets to follow along with this video lecture. And then what we want to do in the process after completion of the Excel sheet, we want to upload the Excel sheet to get a grade for this assignment. Okay, I'm going to pull up the Excel sheet, and this is um, I would say a typical sheet. Now this one is the cost schedule. That first part is showing Blackboard, which is going to show you a step-by-step process on how to solve it. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show the Excel sheet. So if the student completes the cost schedule correctly, this will light up green. That's when you know you did it correct. This method is driven by the process and not numbers necessarily. So if you see the numbers, it has to be exact to get it correct. Okay, first thing you have to know about this cost schedule is the revenue schedule produced for us annual sales volume. That's what we need to input into the cost schedule. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to 2021. This is actual what has happened. And what we want to do is project 22 to 26 our cost numbers. So I'm going to go into the cell, select it, and I'm going to hit equals. And then I'm going to go all the way up to the revenue schedule, which gave us our annual sales volume. And I'm going to hit enter. And then right there, you see it lit up green. That means we did that correct. Now here's some tips and tricks with Excel. I'm going to go up to this cell. I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to highlight to the right. And then I'm going to hit Control R. And what that is going to do, that's going to bring in all the numbers that we have already solved in the revenue schedule for the volume went across. A couple other ways you could do it. You could select this cell and you can grab that box on the bottom, and I could select it and drag it across, and that will do the same thing. Step number two, what we want to do is we have our annual sales volume, and we got that from the revenue schedule. Now we want to do is input the cost inflation. Now the cost inflation is going to, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this cell, and limit equals. That's going to be found in the scenarios tab. So right down there on the left. So you have to hit equals. I'm going to go to the scenarios tab, select it. And what we have here, I'm going to try to scroll out a little bit if I can. All right. What we have here is a scenario of a base case, a best case, and a worst case. What we want to do is, this is interactive, this will change. I just want to hit this. This is our guess of what it's going to be. So I selected 2023. This is what we want to enter. So 2023 is when the first one we want to start with our cost inflation. So I'm going to enter. So that is correct. And since that is already solved on the other tab, I'm just going to hold down Shift, go to the right, and hit Control R, and then that's going to plug in our numbers. Now, just to show this, this is an assumption that we are making based off of some logical number or logical reasoning behind it. But in this scenario, you see what we did here? If I select best case, this will adjust. We have three different situations here that maybe cost inflation will not go as high. So if I selected that, I go back to the finance, this automatically is linked to that scenario tab and will adjust. All right, next what we're going to do, and this is just how I have it set up in this. What we have in the cost schedule is we have cost per unit, two different kind of costs. We got variable cost and we have fixed cost. Variable cost is dependent on output. It changes with the amount of output. Fixed cost is something we have no matter what, even if we produce zero output. On this section, we have variable cost per unit, and then we have fixed cost per unit. If you scroll a little further down, then I got total costs per unit. And then down here, which is real important, we want to solve, we have total costs, cost in millions. And what this is going to be the total. So if we have the variable cost per unit, we're going to multiply that times the actual output that we have up here. All right, so what we did, and we're starting in the projected year. And the reason why I did not put in the inflation for 2022, which you could have, is because I'm already going to have the projected number. I need that for the next year. So what I'm going to do, under variable costs, I'm going to hit equals, and raw materials, in this example, the variable costs, this is going to be found under an assumption that finance department will have. So I hit equals, I'm going to select the assumption tab, and you go down here. Here is our assumption for costs. And you see that I have per unit for raw materials and utilities, and then I have the fixed costs in total in millions. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that cell. That's raw materials per unit, and that is correct. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back and show this assumption real quick. The next one down is utilities. If I go back to our financial statement, the next one down is utilities. So all I have to do here is hold down Shift, and then hit the down arrow, and then hit Control D, and that's going to fill it going down. That's a quick way. If you didn't want to do it, all you had to do is hit equals, go to the assumptions tab, and hit utilities. I've done the same thing. All right, so now what we want to do is, well, we made our assumption in next year projected numbers. Now we're going to have to make our assumptions going forward. What is raw materials going to look like? Well, it's going to be according to the cost of inflation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit equals in 2023. I'm going to hit the left arrow to go to the cell before that, the previous year. And then I'm going to hit Shift 8, which is the multiplication sign. And I'm going to multiply that times, I'm going to hit a bracket and hit 1 plus the inflation rate. And then I'm going to close that bracket up. And what that is doing is taking raw materials and multiplying it times the inflation rate so we can get a good idea of what the costs will be for the next year. Once you have solved or did the inflation for that year, all I have to do is hold down Shift, go to the right, and hit Control R, and it automatically fills the remaining of the years. Okay, we'll do the same thing with utilities. I'm going to say equals, go to left. I'm going to take the previous year, and I'm going to hit Shift 8, or if you have a digit key, just hit the star, and you're going to multiply that times, had a bracket, 1 plus, I'm going to go up to inflation again, and we're going to make the assumption that all costs are going to grow at the rate of inflation. And then I got to make sure I close it. And then we have our utilities. I'm going to go over, hit Control R, and that's going to fill it in. And the next thing we want to know, what is our total variable cost per unit? Two ways of doing it. I can hit equals, I can hit this cell, and then hit the plus sign, and hit this cell. That's one option. Or what you could do is hit Alt equals. It's a little different on the Mac, and I'll have all the details what to select in Blackboard. But hit Alt equals, it automatically will sum up everything above that. Or you can hit equals and spell out sum. Show this really quick. So I can go equals sum. That pops up. I'm going to hit tab. And then all I have to do is hit the arrow up, hold down shift and highlight it and hit enter. Once you do it, I can just drag it over and hit control R and that will do it. All right, so we just did the variable cost per unit. If you remember in the assumptions tab, I do not have the fixed cost per unit. What we are given is the total fixed cost in millions. So that's what we have. So I'm going to hit equals. I'm going to go back to that assumptions page. And I'm going to hit rent right there. And you notice that this is an order of what our cost schedule looks like. So I'm going to select that cell, hit enter. That automatically does that. I'm going to hold down shift, highlight those cells going down, hit control D, and highlight those down. So that is in millions of dollars. And what we do is we divide it by thousands because we don't want to have a large number there. That's 23.5 million. You can multiply it times 1,000 to get the actual number. So what I'm going to do for the next one, we're going to do the same thing. Rent is going to increase by the rate of inflation. So I'm going to say equals. I'm going to go to rent times 1 plus, and we'll go to the cost of inflation. Close it up, hit enter. I'll do the same thing for the next. All right, next tip. Now you could do it individually. I'm going to show this Excel trick here. I'm going to go back into this cell. If you notice what we're doing is I'm multiplying this times 1 plus the rate of inflation. I want inflation to move to the columns. But if I drag this down, I do not want that to drag down as well. So I need to freeze the rows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in front of the number and I'm going to put a $sign in front of that number. Okay. What will that do for us? I can now highlight this down, hit Control D, and if you want to practice and do it, and that dragged it down, right? So if I double click this cell, it's the previous cell times inflation. That did not drag down because I put $1 in front of the number, which means it freezes it as you drag down. All right, now since I did not put the $, in front of the letter, that's the columns up there, I could shift, hold it down, and then hit Control R, and that automatically will fill it all very quick. Again, if you want to practice doing that, you can do that. If you don't feel comfortable with that, you can do each cell individually. Multiply the previous times 1 plus the inflation rate. And all we do here with total cost, I'm going to hit Alt equals. That's going to auto sum, or you can hit equal sum and just highlight them. And we're going to sum up the total fixed cost on here. Okay, so the assumptions, all they gave us were the variable cost per unit and the fixed cost, total fixed costs. Now what we have to do is solve what is the total variable cost and what is the fixed cost per unit. So let's start with the fixed cost per unit. So with this, we already have the total fixed cost for rent. So it's very easy to solve for this. So I'm going to say equals, I'm going to do the 23.5 million total. And what I want to find out, what is it per unit? So I'm going to divide this by, right? Because that is the total. I'm going to divide that by our annual sales volume. And that's why we put it in there. So now it's easier to calculate. Okay, so I'm going to divide it. However, it's a reminder that this is in thousands. We're multiplying it times thousands because these are millions of units. So when I divide it, I need to multiply this times 1,000 because this is divided by 1,000, how we got 23.5. So I'm going to multiply it times 1,000, and then that is going to be $65 per unit. That would be the correct amount. All right, just to make this a little quicker, and then you can do each individual one if you want to practice, I'm going to select this cell. And if we notice that this, we're going to take each number and divide it by that quantity for that year. So what I want to do is I want to make sure when I drag this down, it does not drag down. So I'm going to put a $sign in front of the number. But if I drag it to the right where the columns, I do want to hit the next year when I drag that. So I'm going to leave that letter open, no $sign. I'm going to enter. And now I could drag this all the way down, hit Control D, did it right. And then I'm going to drag all the way to the right, Control R to fill right. And that's just a real quick way of solving this cost schedule. Next, what we have is total fixed costs per unit. So all I'm going to do is hit all equal. I'm going to sum up all these, and this will tell us what it costs per unit. Again, hold down Shift, hit the right arrow, hit Control R, and that's going to fill it. And then what we want to get here is what is our total cost per unit. So I'm going to select this cell, hit equals. I'm going to hit the total fixed cost per unit plus the total variable cost per unit. Enter. So that is going to be the total cost per unit. All I have to do is drag that across, hit Control R again, and that's going to solve it. Okay, we're almost done. Next, what we want to do is find out what is the total variable cost. What the assumptions told us, we know what the variable cost per unit is. So we want to know what is the total variable cost. So again, I'm going to say equals. I'm going to start with raw materials. I'm going to select that, raw materials. All right. So now you have to think about the other way. We have the unit cost per unit. Now we're trying to find the total cost. So I'm going to take that per unit cost, right? $226. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply that times our annual sales volume. Okay, now that's going to be in millions of dollars. I do not want it in millions of dollars, so I'm going to multiply it, but then I'm going to divide it by 1,000. So it's not in a million. Okay, so that is correct. Again, I'm going to try to speed this up because we're dividing it by that, right? I do not want to drag it if it goes down. That's our row column. So I'm going to put a $sign to freeze it in front of the number and leave that letter open. So that's going to do that. Now I'm going to hit Shift, down, D, and I'm going to show you a quick tip here. Instead of dragging that across right now, what I could do is go to the total variable costs. I'm going to hit Alt equal. That's going to sum them up. And that's correct. And now all I'm going to do is highlight. I'm going to hold down Shift as I highlight all these. And now I'm going to drag it all the way across and hit Control R. And that's a very quick way of solving our variable costs. The last thing for our cost schedule is getting our total costs in millions, not per unit. We already saw that. That's per unit. Now we want to get the total cost. This is the most important. This is the number that we're going to have to input in other financial statements. So I'm going to say equals. I'm going to go to the total fixed cost plus the total variable cost. That's correct. Now I'm going to drag that across again. I hold down Shift. I highlight the whole thing and hit Control R. Okay, this is the most important. So this is what we want. So I'm going to type in most important right there. Now what I did was I left the revenue schedule up because we needed to input annual sales volume. And what I did down here was I left the income statement open and the working capital schedule. Those are two things that the cost schedule is connected to. So what we're going to do is we're going to find out how to solve the income statement from our cost schedule. So it's only the highlighted gray is what we have to enter in. And if we get it correct, it will light up. So I'm going to hit this cell, cost of sales. I'm going to say equals. And what is cost of sales on the revenue schedule? Well, that is our total cost that we just solved. And then all I'm going to do is drag, or not drag, but enter, input it in. It's real important to do that. We're never typing it. This is real important when it comes to financials. We never type that 174.7. We always want to input it where we solved it. It's always connected. So anything changes, our whole financials will change. I'm going to highlight this over, hit Control R to solve it really quick. I left this open just to show a couple more cost things. We have selling, general, and administrative costs. Typically, what is this? This is going to be found in our assumptions page right down here. That's total. So I'm just going to bring that in. And what does this grow by? This is going to grow by the cost of inflation as well. So I'm going to multiply it times 1 plus, and I'm going to go up. And I do it, I have our financial statements vertical, so I can go right to 2023 in the same year to get that inflation number. I'm going to close it up. And then all I have to do is drag this to the right. We solved it. And then what we want to do on the income statement is solve total cost. And really all the income statement is, you have revenue, you're adding it up, and then you have costs and you're adding it up. And then all you do is you do revenue minus cost, minus taxes, minus interest, minus different stuff. So it's real simple when it comes to that. So all I'm going to do is sum this up and then have that go across and then solve it that way. Okay, last part of this is working capital schedule. So we do use the cost schedule to input in there. The reason why we do that is because we're going to use cost of sales for different parts of our working capital schedule. I do not have it here. We do have a module on working capital schedule. We'll go over later, but just to show, we are going to input at the very beginning. So I'm going to say equals. I'm going to go up to 2022, and I'm going to go to the total costs that we already solved. So really the total costs you're going to input twice in the income statement and the working capital schedule. I'm going to say equals, and I'm going to hit to the R. All right. I want to point a couple things for you. What we have here is I have a grading system. We just completed it. And what this grading system, this is very advanced. This is your overall grade, and it shows 100%. And what we did was we broke it down, the revenue schedule, cost schedule, income statement, cash flow statement, balance sheet, depreciation, income statement, working capital schedule, debt and interest schedule, and shareholders' equity. We're not going to cover all these, but what this does show is, I'm going to show you in a second, if I delete what I did, you can see how that affects other parts of the finance, our financial statements. So once I delete the cost, we'll see how that works. I have two different grading, and this is for the student to really understand financials. I have the overall grade, and then I got the weighted grade. The difference is this will show you if you mess up, for example, revenue, this will show you how it messes up all the other financials. The weighted grade is a bit different. Although revenue might be messed up, it'll show it there. What weighted does is if you calculated, let's say, the cost schedule correctly, that will grade it on its own merits, not if it's the correct answer. This one will say your number is wrong, but if you did it correctly, this will show how it is. So it gives you two different perspectives. Let's go back to the financial statement. I'll show this last thing. All financial statements, and you have to save this document a certain way for this to work, have a reset worksheet. What this does, if you select it, it'll automatically delete all the work that we did, but yet keep all these assumptions intact so the student can keep on practicing what they learned. So we just solved it. And if you're not really feel comfortable with it, you could hit reset the worksheet, and that's going to take a few seconds. And right now I can't scroll down to show you in action, but what it's doing is doing all our work. It's deleting our work. And then if I scroll down, everything's deleted that we worked on, and now we can work on it again. The purpose of finance in doing this is that practice makes perfect. It's a habit you create. That button's really great that you don't have to go around deleting things. It automatically does it, deletes everything for us to plug in. Okay, last thing I want to show you, if I go back to the grade, we have not entered in the cost right here. I deleted everything we did. I'm going to show you what it looks like now. The overall grade, what it's going to show, if you mess up the cost schedule, that's going to mess up. We're only going to get 56.7% of all financials correct if the cost schedule is not correct. Okay? And what you can look, if you scroll down, you can see it has nothing to do with revenue. Cost schedule is 0. Income statement, it messed up 50% of it. Messed up the cash flow statement, balance sheet. Depreciation doesn't really touch. Income statement, it messes up. So it shows you a really, and I have detailed grading each subcategory within that financial, and it shows how I mess up the grade. Now, if I show you, bring your attention to the weighted grade, look what it did. 87.12% is still correct. So if the student sees this, what it's saying right here is you did do everything correct other than the cost schedule, right? Now, 75%, a lot of it has to do with cost, income statement, but it doesn't affect everything else. Even when the numbers are incorrect, we did everything correct with the cash flow statement, with the balance sheet, depreciation. So this is a very advanced way for, and then 96% for the working capital, because I do have that we have to input the total cost. So it shows two different perspectives. Okay, I have everything correct besides cost. Now this shows you how much cost messed everything up. Okay. Well, I want to say thank you for listening. This is one of the examples that we're doing with cost. And we also like to do modules on revenue, working capital, and depreciation, because I know depreciation is a big deal when it comes to medical expenses, and how is that inputted in, and how is it connected to the other financials. Thank you. And any questions, please let me know.